Good morning and welcome back to Margin. This morning, I would really like to talk through the part 2 aspect of inspiration and building margin into your own life. So let's jump right into it. So margin is the space between what one is required to do and what one wants to do. And this margin, this space, gives us the opportunity to have a surplus of not only resources, but time. And oftentimes, unfortunately, it's one or the other. But margin gives you the ability to move into that place where you're able to take advantage of not only having freedom of time because you're valuing and you're prioritizing those things that you do value, but also the resources because you are strategically looking at where you want to go and what is important to you so that you're only focusing on those things that truly bring you the most value. So margin is seemingly lost in this fast-paced, no margin, no rest, constantly go world that we live in, the world we operate in. And unfortunately, I think so many people get caught up in this hamster wheel of a life that they don't look up to realize how much they're going through the motions, how much they're stuck in going through the daily motions, and then looking up after a period of time and realizing how much time has gone by, but ultimately how little they've actually accomplished. So this is such an easy trap to get stuck in. It's one that's really hard to escape from because the rat race is what it is for a reason. That's why people call it the rat race. It's so easy to get caught in, but it's so hard to get out of. And you really have to have a why behind why is it important enough for me to build margin into my life to where I'm not living in a proverbial rat race alongside a bunch of other people that haven't taken the time to look up to figure out what they really wanted. So I had to ask the question of myself, what kept drawing me in? What drew me into the rat race? Because even though I had that epiphany, even though I had that downtime and that inspiration that came from having margin, I still had obligations and I still had a period of time I had to go through in order to transform those areas of my life in order to build the margin that I was truly seeking. So for me, what it came back to was during the recession, I saw so many people, so many families I knew who were impacted significantly from the recession, whether it was broken marriages, or it was loss of resources, loss of a business, health issues, all kinds of things. And I believe that this was more or less a catalyst for me to do my very best to build margin into life so that life happens, things happen, people get sick, and yet it makes it so much worse if you don't have the margin built in order to address those things as they come along. Because life happens, but at least it doesn't always have to necessarily be an emergency if you're actually prepared to the best of your ability. So what I realized during that time was that people may look perfect on the outside. We, especially in the age of social media, people try to show their highlights. They're not great at showing, and we are not great at showing the things we're struggling through, the things we're working through, especially when it comes to personal finance. And what I realized is there may be a ton of people out there that you look up to that their lives look absolutely perfect, but that doesn't mean that there aren't cracks in their foundation, and that doesn't mean their foundation isn't crumbling. And that is something just that was a reality check for me. So during that time, I realized how many people were faking it till they made it. They were looking the part, but ultimately I didn't want to just look the part. I didn't want to look just healthy, wealthy, generous, so on and so forth. I actually wanted to embody those things. I wanted to be those things. And during that time, it really set me into a hyper focus and correcting those aspects of my life that I could be seen as being a hypocrite in. So I started out with what I thought was the most glaring aspect, which was getting some of my habits and my behaviors to align with my beliefs. And so a lot of that came down to me changing the daily behaviors or almost habits in my life, and removing those things that weren't healthy or that weren't productive for me. So at that time, I decided to move back to my hometown, and I had a great community there, and my girlfriend of 5 years, which was an added plus for sure. But I realized at that time that I needed to take that realization that I had experienced in Tahoe and make sure that I actually applied it. So I started one thing at a time, and I realized the relationship with my girlfriend at that time was not ultimately something that was best for either of us. So I ended that relationship, and I moved into a place of addressing one thing at a time in my life. So basically, I built in the routines that I really wanted to see. I started to be a lot more careful about who I was around, who I spent my time with. And we know that, who you spend the most time with, you become. And so I was being very careful about the people I was spending my time with. And then I was just really working on the aspects of what habits I wanted to build into place. So although that was a really challenging decision to break up with my girlfriend of 5 years at that time, I knew it was the right decision for both of us. And I also knew that it would cause a ripple effect, which it did. And through that, I evaluated every aspect of my life. And it actually didn't even start with the financial aspect. And that actually took a little while for me to get around to. But I basically approached each aspect of my life that I needed to change and be more intentional about. And I knew that what I focused on, I would win at. And so basically one aspect at a time, I went down the line and I focused on those aspects that I knew would change the trajectory of my life because of being intentional. So at this point, I decided to take more of an active approach versus a passive approach to my personal finances. So what I did is at the time I owned a home. I actually bought this home for like 37% under market, and I was able to go through a process of renovating the house, then house hacking it, and from that point, basically, I sat on my bed one night in my master bedroom, and I was reviewing all my bills. And at that time, this was a few years out of college, and so I had, I had the actual home loan. I had a home equity line of credit for all the renovations I've done, and then I had some credit card debt and some other aspects. And I had car loans as well. I'm a car guy, so I of course had car loans. But I was looking at it from a standpoint of like, my gosh, why do I have so much debt? And it almost switched for me. It almost caused another sprint of inspiration for me to get that debt paid off. And so I moved in a direction where over the next 2 years, I listed my house and sold it and went through the whole process of getting 100% debt free. And so that was a big shift in my life. It was a big shift in my viewpoint, because I was able to see how much I was able to accomplish with just focusing and just realizing what I was capable of. So I've seen so many people in that place where they didn't have margin. They were working endlessly for a company they may not even be passionate about or be excited about or buy into the vision of. And I've seen so many people just staring at a blank screen with a phone blaring in the background and wondering, am I going to spend the next 10, 20, 30 years doing this type of work that is life-sucking? So I've seen, unfortunately, so many people in that place. And honestly, I'd been there. I had dealt with that, and I had tried to figure out, okay, how do I bridge this gap? How do I move out of this 9-to-5 lifestyle and move into something that's more flexible and that's more in line with my lifestyle? So during this time of just reflecting on personal finance, realizing that there's so many people out there that don't don't love what they're doing, and they're stuck in that rat race. And even CEOs that I had worked with, or presidents I had worked with, were also trying to figure it out, and they would just automatically apply their own personal approach to finance to the corporate world, to their businesses. And it made me realize something funny. It made me realize the fact that all of us are more or less picking and choosing, cherry picking these aspects of personal finance and combining them in and building in a mix that basically we carry out, and that shapes how long we stay with an employer, or how we run our businesses, or how we handle our personal finances. And I believe that money is just a tool. I know that that's for some hard to hear, but really it's just a tool. It's just meant to be a tool for you to not only provide for your basic needs, but also to be able to use that tool for the purpose of accomplishing those goals and aspirations that you have. So going back to my personal finances, I decided to radically transform the way that I handled my personal finances. And so with that process, I was building margin into various aspects of my life, whether it was relational, whether it was time management, or whether it was resources in regards to money. But I basically looked at it from a holistic point of view of, okay, money is just one aspect. And oftentimes the way we treat money and the way we spend money is just a byproduct of the underlying issue. So during that time of taking a strategic approach to my own personal finances, I realized that I had a heart for helping others and helping others in this process, whether it was teaching courses or whether it was meeting one-on-one to walk through that process with them and build up a strategic plan for their finances. But what I realized is my time was limited. I could only meet with so many people. So that prompted me to really move into what you see here and giving me the opportunity to help people in a broader scale, in a broader environment, rather than just a small class or a one-on-one meeting. And so I'm excited to be here today to be able to deploy these resources into your life, to be able to not only help you get the information, but to actually apply that information so that you can be successful with managing your personal finances. So today, my call to action really comes down to, when was the last time you felt like you truly had margin? You truly had margin, not only from a holistic approach in your life, but more specifically in your personal finances. And oftentimes people think back to when they were in high school, or when they were maybe in the beginning stages of college before they realized how broke they were going to be, or whatnot. And oftentimes people have a hard time thinking back, as to when it was that they felt like they were financially in a place where they had margin. So think about that today. So please do like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you're notified of each of these daily episodes to help you on your journey to reach margin. Thank you so much for your time today, and we'll see you back here tomorrow.